these two problems, the right words for you and the right emotion for you, are where most people struggle with affirmations. This is why I almost never respond to the questions about what's your favorite affirmation, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I think the best one is. What matters is the right affirmation for you. Welcome. You're listening to the Reprogram Your Mind podcast, and I'm your host, Todd L. Bauerle.
You think between 60 and 70,000 thoughts a day. 98% of your life is controlled by habit. If you want to change your life, you have to start by changing how you think. When you change you, everything in life changes.
If we can see it in our mind, we can hold it in our hand.
Welcome back, everybody. This is the Reprogram Your Mind podcast. My name is Todd. I'm your host. I'm also your coach. I work with clients all over the world, helping them all the time reprogram their mind so that it's more in alignment with the goals, the dreams, the life that they really desire. And part of that business is making content, not just this podcast, but TikTok, Instagram. That's where I find most of the people that I work with. And I get a lot of conversation going when I say something like, we become what we think about all day long, or that your results are a reflection and give off the same energy as the thoughts and the feelings that you have about yourself. I get a lot of comments. Not all of them are positive and supportive. A lot of times I get a lot of hate. And I get hate from people that have actually tried to reprogram their mind, but they've been unsuccessful. But the number one question that I get in return to all the content that I post is how? How do you reprogram your mind? How do you think different thoughts? How do you change how you think and feel about yourself? And I've shared, really, it's simple. You have become who you are through the repetition of thinking the thoughts and having those ideas float around in your conscious mind that you've played with your mental faculties enough so that your subconscious mind accepts it as true. And if you don't like the results that's getting, it stands to reason you need new ideas. You need new emotional involvement. And you need to experience it with enough repetition that your subconscious mind accepts that as true. That's how you do it. It's pretty simple. Change what goes into your subconscious mind. Change what you are preoccupied with mentally all day long. Most of us are preoccupied with our problems, not our goals. Most of us look at the world and see conditions and circumstances blocking us instead of seeing the opportunities that lead to our goals on the other side of them. Reprogramming your mind is an art. It's a science. And what's most important for you to understand is you. What's interesting is when I share this general idea with people, repetition of a new idea over time, understanding how you're thinking so that you can change your thoughts, we start talking about affirmations. Affirmations is really an idea that we repeat to ourselves with enough time and enough emotion and enough persistence that our subconscious mind accepts it as true. When I start talking about affirmations, I get two responses. I get people that say, affirmations are incredible. They've changed so much in my life. I've earned more money because of affirmations. I've attracted the ideal partner. Affirmations are great. They're incredible. And then I get another group of people that say, affirmations don't work. Affirmations are bad. You shouldn't use affirmations. It actually causes more problems when you're trying to create or manifest the reality you want to live in. We have a problem with affirmations, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Just what exactly is the problem with affirmations? I think it comes down to understanding of how the mind works and understanding of ourself. This can explain why one person can get an affirmation and that works for them, and we could give the exact same affirmation that we know works to another person and have it not work for them. When you really understand why two people can get two incredibly different results, you can understand how to be more effective at reprogramming your mind. So let's get into it. First, we just need to recap our mind, our conscious mind and our subconscious mind, and how it works to create the programming. We live in an environment surrounded by people, events, conditions, and circumstances. Our mind does not exist in a vacuum. It's influenced by all of those factors around us. We perceive the outside world through our physical senses. That corresponds our mind to the outside world. See, smell, taste, touch, hear. And we are surrounded by messages, ideas floating all around. Turn on social media, there's all kinds of ideas floating there. Go to media, there's all kinds of ideas. Talk to your friends, talk to your parents, talk to your partners. There's all kinds of ideas out there. Those ideas come at us and through our senses, and once they hit our senses, they're inside of our conscious mind. Now, what we do with that idea when it gets inside of our conscious mind matters a lot to our subconscious conditioning and programming. If an idea comes in that you disagree with, it's really easy to reject it. You can use your reason to reject it, and you can choose to think about something different. But if an idea comes into your conscious mind and you start to focus on it with your will, with your attention, if you start to build images in your mind based on that idea, you're going to start getting emotionally involved, and that draws that idea down into our subconscious mind. Once an idea enters our subconscious mind, it becomes part of the neural network that we use to navigate through the world. It becomes part of our identity. It becomes part of our belief system. Most people are not aware that they have accepted ideas in their subconscious mind that are probably not helpful and beneficial for them. They certainly don't help them reach their goals. Another way to talk about these ideas floating around outside of us is those are suggestions. You can turn on the news and they could be talking about the very real fact of inflation or impending financial doom or the coming challenges in the world or the problems that we have in politics. Those are all suggestions. And really they're suggesting to you, do you want to get emotionally involved with this idea or not? They're suggesting, do you want to think more of this? You don't have to accept any of them. What does it mean to accept an idea? That means that you start playing with it, using your imagination, building pictures, holding it with your attention, with your will. Start allowing that suggestion to influence your logic and how you logically think about things. You remember that idea and it becomes a part of your short or long-term memory. Those suggestions can help shape the way that we look at things, shape our perception. They're also suggestions that can open us up to intuitive ideas or block our intuition from working. If we're really talking about the messages that we get from media right now, I think it's suggesting to you, do you want to be angry about this? Do you want to be outraged? Do you want to feel more powerlessness? Really, that's the majority of the suggestions we get from our media. And what's interesting is as soon as you start to feel that emotion, you're accepting that idea. And really think about this today. Tonight, you're going to go home, you're going to pull up social media, and if you find something that makes you mad or angry, you're accepting a negative or limiting idea about yourself by getting emotionally involved. You are reinforcing the programming you have in your subconscious mind through emotion. If you've ever felt like you don't belong, or maybe that you're struggling with imposter syndrome, the cause of that is accepting a suggestion from the outside world of whatever situation happened and thinking, I'm not good enough. I don't belong here. There's something wrong with me. The more you think that idea and get emotionally invested with it, that will move into your subconscious mind and become part of the paradigm and program that controls you. Now, it doesn't take very long to realize I've probably accepted a lot of negative ideas about myself in the world that are not helping me. They're not productive in helping me move forward. If we're going to change it, we need to understand what the idea is that we've accepted into our subconscious mind that needs to change. This is, I think, the first problem when it comes from affirmations. People ask me all the time, what's your favorite affirmation for money? My favorite affirmation for money might work for me, but it might not work for you based on what's in my subconscious mind already. I'm several years into this game of reprogramming my mind. I've had an enormous change in results. I need less help in some areas, maybe more in others, compared to other people. I'm already thinking differently. An affirmation that I'm currently using might not be the best one for you. Can you see where that becomes a problem? It's not so much the words that you use in an affirmation as it is, are they the right words for you to use? The second problem with affirmations comes to the language that we're speaking. And I'm not talking about English or Spanish or French or German or anything like that. I'm talking about the language of the subconscious mind. Words are part of the language of your conscious thinking mind. Your reasoning uses words. Your imagination takes words and turns them into images. So really, your conscious thinking mind speaks two languages. It speaks in images, and it also speaks in words. But that is not the language of the subconscious mind. The Greeks referred to the subconscious mind as your heart, your feeling, your emotion. We call it your emotional mind. It speaks the language of emotion to you. You could say the right words for you, but with the wrong emotion. For example, if you used Bob Proctor's affirmation for money, I am so happy and grateful now that money flows to me in increasing quantities through multiple sources on a continuous basis, and you said that with the emotion of disbelief, the emotion of frustration, the emotion of feeling unworthy, I guarantee you, you are reinforcing the current negative programming that you have in your subconscious mind. Those words need to be said with the emotion of excitement, the emotion of belief, the emotion of anticipation. These two problems, the right words for you and the right emotion for you, are where most people struggle with affirmations. This is why I almost never respond to the questions on social media about what's your favorite affirmation for this or for that, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I think the best one is. What matters is the right affirmation for you. But let's take a step back. What in the world even is an affirmation, and why would I use that as a method of reprogramming my mind? Remember I said you live in a sea of ideas. Those are suggestions. An affirmation is simply a new idea. An idea that's likely the opposite of the programmed ideas you've been experiencing. That idea is a suggestion. And an affirmation is a practice of suggesting ideas from yourself to yourself. From your conscious mind to your subconscious mind, from your thinking mind to your emotional mind. The process of affirming something, suggesting one of these ideas to yourself, is called autosuggestion. The incredible book, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, has an entire chapter dedicated to autosuggestion. Napoleon Hill writes in here that the only known method of creating the emotion of faith is autosuggestion, suggesting a new idea from your conscious mind to your subconscious. And he says here, no thought, whether it be negative or positive, can enter the subconscious mind without the aid of the principle of autosuggestion. This means when those ideas are flying around outside of you, you repeat them in your mind. You build images with them, you focus on them, you emotionalize them inside of your mind, and that's how it enters your subconscious. Really, we've got to become more preoccupied with what we want to think about than what we're being told to think about by the outside world. And he says here, the mere reading of the words is of no consequence unless you mix emotion or feeling with your words. If you repeat 1,000,000 times a day the famous formula, day by day, in every way, I'm getting better and better, without mixing emotion and faith with your words, you will experience no desirable results. Your subconscious mind recognizes and acts upon only thoughts which have been well mixed with emotion or feeling. And just more to the point, he says this, plain, unemotional words do not influence the subconscious mind. He says, learn to reach your subconscious mind with thoughts or spoken words which have been well emotionalized with belief. So let's try and find the right words for you. And I think it's even worth noticing down here, he says, where failure is experienced, if you've tried affirmations and they haven't worked, he says it's the individual, not the method, which has failed, which I know sounds a lot like victim blaming, but it's true. If you don't have this basic understanding of ideas as suggestions, and you can choose to accept or reject those ideas, then of course you're not aware that you could be doing it better. If no one ever told you you need to feel those words as you're repeating them, you're not going to know any better. So there's no harm in recognizing that you don't know it all. If you did know it all, you wouldn't be listening to this podcast. You'd be living the dream life, probably teaching other people how to do it. What he does say is if you try and fail, make another effort and still another until you succeed. This is the principle of persistence. But I want to go to another one of my favorite books and just reinforce this idea of affirmations even more before we move forward. And for that, we're going to talk about The Power of Awareness by Neville Goddard. In here, Neville says, "That which you will not affirm as true of yourself can never be realized by you." He says, "All transformation is based upon suggestion, and this can only work where you lay yourself completely open to an influence." He says you must abandon yourself to your ideal, to your goal. And he says you must assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled until your assumption has all the sensory vividness of reality. You must imagine that you are already experiencing what you desire. He says, that is, you must assume the feeling of fulfillment of your desire until you are possessed by it. And this feeling crowds all other ideas out of your consciousness. So let's talk about what it takes to find the right words and the right feelings for your affirmations to work. First off, you're never going to persist in affirmations if you don't have the right goal. So number one, you need to make sure that you have the right goal. That's a goal that's clearly defined. It's something that you really want and you're excited about, something likely you don't know how to achieve, something that scares you because you know it's going to demand growth from you, and something you probably have no idea how you're going to reach it. That would be the right goal. You also need to have images that you can clearly see in your mind. You're going to find these images just by practice. If you were to sit down and meditate and try to visualize and see the dream life the way that you want to be living, you're going to experiment with all kinds of different images until you find some that really emotionally impact you. Those that make you excited, those that bring a tear to your eye, those that help you feel peaceful and joyous. You need to have those images because the images create the feeling. And if you've tried to visualize and you've been unsuccessful, you get out a sheet of paper and you write down and you describe a day in the life of you living in that dream life. If it's money, what does it feel like to have that money and what do you do with it? How do you spend your days? If it's a relationship, what would you be doing with your partner right now? Whatever it is, start describing it on a piece of paper. And the more detail you put in the description, the more clearly you are going to see it in your mind. So number one, you need to have the goal clearly defined in your mind with images that create feeling. From there, we need to find out what's in our subconscious mind right now. How are we currently programmed? The easiest way to do that is to look at your life. Look at the results that you're experiencing in your life. Do you like the results you're getting financially, with your career, with your body, with your relationships? Probably not. There's probably something that you want to improve there. The principle is that your mind is always working on the ideas that are locked in our subconscious mind. Those ideas are manifesting as results that we experience in every area of our life. So if we want to know what's happening on the inside, we just have to look to the outside. In fact, Neville Goddard writes about this in Awakened Imagination in one of my favorite chapters called The Coin of Heaven. If you listen back to the first year of the podcast, you're going to find some great episodes talking about the coin of heaven. I recommend you go look at those. But let me read here real quick. Your inner speech, meaning your programmed ideas that you've accepted in your subconscious mind, are perpetually written all around you in happenings, events, conditions, circumstances, the way that you see things. That's an expression of those ideas from your subconscious mind. He gives here the instruction, learn to relate these happenings to your inner speech and you will become self-taught. This is the number one thing that I try to teach my clients. If you can look at the areas of your life that you're unhappy with and relate them to your programming, you then know the words and the emotions that you need to put into your subconscious mind to reprogram your mind. So let's pick one of these happenings. Pick a situation that you are dissatisfied with, where you don't like the results that you're experiencing. And I want you to write it out on a blank sheet of paper in as much detail as you possibly could. The details are important because the details create images and create emotions. You really need to capture what your programming is using words and feelings. I tell my clients, write the negative situation down until you can't write anymore, until you've got it all out onto the paper. You'll likely feel exhausted. You might feel negative. You might feel angry. Sometimes if I'm writing out a really negatively charged emotion, my hands get cold. I start to feel cold. But really you want to be empty. And you can ask yourself, is the problem in me or is it on the paper? If it's on the paper and it's no longer in you, now we have something to work on. That written description is your inner conversation. It's a graphic representation of the programming you have buried in your subconscious mind. You've captured it. And if you read through it, you'll probably feel negatively emotionally charged towards it. And that's a good thing. That's what you want. Now we know what's in your subconscious mind. And chances are what you want is probably the opposite of it. If you keep going through serial relationships one after another and are never really finding your partner or feeling like you belong or having that acceptance and love that you want, if you continually go through a cycle of relationships where there's misunderstandings and frustrations, where there's a lot of blaming, the person doesn't really understand you, doesn't accept you, what you want is the opposite of that. I want a long-term relationship. I want to feel like I belong. I want to feel accepted. I want to feel trusted. I want to feel loved and cared for. If the situation is your bank account, you're always living paycheck to paycheck, and you're worried about where the next dollar's coming from, and you're scared to death of a negative event happening that's going to cost you money that you don't have, what you probably want is the opposite. You want money flowing in all the time, more than your needs. You want enough money coming in so that you know that whatever happens, you have the resources to be able to take care of it. Maybe you want to upgrade your home. Maybe you want to upgrade your car. Maybe you want to go on vacations around the world, and you don't want to have to worry about paying for it. I also think it's important to realize that you may not want an extravagant life because maybe you can't see it. Maybe you can't believe that it's possible. Maybe you just want practical abundance. I want to be able to take care of all of my needs. I want to pay for things like the dishwasher when it breaks down and not worry about it. I want to have vacations that I look forward to. I want to help other family members out when they're struggling. So what we're going to do to get clear on what we want in our subconscious mind is take that description of the negative situation that we wrote down, and we're going to write out the opposite. And when I do this, I go through line by line and I look at what I said. I'm really worried about whatever. And I ask myself, what's the opposite of worry? Maybe it's confidence. Maybe it's faith. Maybe it's excitement and enthusiasm. Depending on the context of the situation, I might choose completely different words. If money comes in inconsistently and I'm always worried, I'm going to write down, I have more money than what I know what to do with, and I'm always excited. If you wrote down, I hate waking up in the morning and going to work, you can write down the opposite of that, which is, I'm always excited about a new day working on my goals. If you wrote down things like, I feel like I'm never good enough, you can write down, I'm always growing and I'm excited and I'm trusting that things are always getting better. Here's the thing that you're really looking for. I've said this before on the podcast. You're trying to look for that one sentence that really jumps out, that smacks you in the stomach, that says, if this idea could change, everything would change. One of the most powerful examples I remember using from my own experience was I was dealing with anxiety and overwhelm, and I was procrastinating all kinds of tasks. And I wrote down this sentence in the middle of it that said, I become so paralyzed by anxiety and doubt that even the simplest of tasks becomes impossible. And when I was writing down the opposite, I looked at it and went, okay, what's the opposite of being overwhelmed by anxiety? And I wrote down something like, I live my life energized by faith. And then I look at the back half of that sentence and I saw, if anxiety makes simple things become impossible, then what does faith do? And I realized the opposite wasn't finding an opposite of simple things and an opposite of impossible things. I realized it was flipping their places. That if I could live my life excited by faith, then impossible things would become simple. And when I wrote that out, I felt this brick hit my stomach. I think I even felt a little sick to my stomach, like I was going to throw up. I knew I had found that core idea that the entire situation revolved around. And I knew that's the thing I need to make an affirmation about. Now, when you look at the positive situation, you're going to have thoughts, the way that you want to be thinking. You're going to have some feeling and emotional words. And you're also going to have behaviors that you're going to be doing things differently. Any of those things can be affirmations. The trick is to try and find the core idea. You don't need 100 different affirmations. You need one affirmation you can repeat 100 times. You might realize in reading your descriptions of situations that the thought leads to the feeling, leads to the behavior gets me the result that I don't like. If I just change how I'm thinking, I'm going to automatically change how I feel, and I will automatically do what I need to be doing. So you want to try and find the very beginning of the train of causation. You find that phrase, and your job is to use as few words as possible to create the maximum amount of clarity and the maximum amount of emotion. I'm telling you, that affirmation that I have, I live my life energized by faith so that impossible things become simple. Man, that really excited me. And don't get me wrong, it scared me, but I read that and I went, I believe that. And that's an essential step for crafting an affirmation. You want to look at the words and say, do I believe that? Now, if I read that and I went, I don't really believe it, I can affirm progress. I could say, instead of I live my life energized by faith, I could say, I am learning to live my life energized by faith so that impossible things become simple. You see what we do there? We soften the language a little bit. Instead of jumping right to the polar opposite, we find a line somewhere in between that's making progress from where I'm at, that's a step closer to where I want to be, and building an affirmation. When you do that and you look at the word and you say, that's the language I want to use for my affirmation, I can believe that, you know you found the right suggestion to start giving yourself. Now, I know Bob Proctor would always start an affirmation with, I am so happy and grateful. I would write out over and over, I am so happy and grateful now that I live my life energized by faith so that impossible things become simple. And I think you can do that. You can add, I am so happy and grateful now, because you want to feel happy and you want to feel grateful. But don't use those words if you don't feel happy. Don't use grateful if you don't actually feel gratitude. You use those words to remind you to feel that way right now. So you could have a very long version of that with, I am so happy and grateful now that in front of it. Or you can just use the shortened version, I am energized by my faith so that impossible things are simple. But you want it to have the same emotional impact. And once you've defined that sentence for an affirmation that works for you, then you need to get involved with the repetition. Now, keep in mind what Napoleon Hill said about autosuggestion. It's a suggestion from self to self. It reaches your subconscious mind through the aid of your five senses. So guess what? When you're writing an affirmation, you're using your physical body. You're using one of your senses. When you read it with your eyes, you're using a different sense. When you're speaking it, it's both physical and you're hearing it. Now, if there's a way that you could smell your goal, it'd be great to use that as well. Some people might envision living in the home with their family and chocolate chip cookies are cooking in the kitchen and you could almost smell them. And anytime you smell chocolate chip cookies, you think about that home that you want to buy. Same thing goes with taste. For the most part, we're really going to be relying on using our physical body, seeing and hearing for autosuggestion. So what do? We write out our affirmation as many times a day as we need to. You just keep doing it. You want to write it as many times as you can so you are always thinking about that new idea. You also want to say it out loud. Go to the bathroom, go to the mirror, look yourself right in the eyeballs, and you repeat that phrase over and over to yourself. And when you speak it, you really want to feel it. Same with writing. If you're writing it or speaking it, you really want to feel the emotion of it. If you're writing, you're excited, you want to feel excited. If you're writing grateful, you want to feel gratitude. But you go in the mirror and you repeat the affirmation into your eyeballs several minutes a day, in the morning and at night. Now, there's a lot of other time where we're driving around, or maybe we're working outside in the yard, or we're exercising. And for that, you're probably not going to be writing and you don't have a mirror, but you do have headphones. You can make a recording of yourself. There's a couple of apps out there. Self-Talk Plus is an app that some of my clients use. I use Think Up. You could use those two apps and make recordings of those affirmations. I really like Think Up because you can add music, you can add frequencies to it. There's a lot of things you can do to make listening to that affirmation more exciting for you and more emotional. And then you listen to it on repeat over and over again. You want to write it out, speak it, and listen to it as much as you possibly can throughout the day. Now, how long does it take? Does it take a month or 2, 6 months? How long does it take to shift? Each paradigm that you're shifting is going to take its own amount of time to shift. It depends on how effective the words are for overriding the negative energy, the negative paradigm. How effective is that? It's going to depend on your persistence. How consistent are you really doing it? And it's going to depend on your emotional state. It's really easy to see that you could have the right words and the wrong emotion, and you could be reinforcing the old limiting beliefs. And if you do that, It'll never change. But let's just understand this. It takes as long as it takes for a program to finally be shifted in your subconscious mind. You need to be in it for the long haul. And when you start to see yourself behaving differently in that same situation, when you start to see yourself feeling differently in those circumstances, you realize I've changed. When those shifts have happened, eventually the results are going to start to change. And that's when you no longer need to affirm that. Now look, there are some situations, beliefs, affirmations that can take a matter of weeks, and then you move on to the next idea that you want to suggest to yourself through an affirmation. You want to have really no more than 1 or 2 of these affirmations that you're using at a time. Now, you could have a whole page that describes maybe the version of you, the way you want to live, and that can have multiple affirmations in it. That's okay. But for one of these specific affirmations that you're going to nail down with a high degree of repetition and emotion, you really want to focus on just 1 or 2. Otherwise, your mind is going to get overwhelmed. You're trying to change too many things, and you're eventually going to quit. Shift your paradigms 1 or 2 at a time, maximum. The purpose of this work isn't to spend all day repeating affirmations or writing things down. It's to be out living your life, living your best life you possibly can. Most of the time, I try and spend only about an hour a day of setting my mind to my goals and reprogramming myself. But I know in the beginning, I spent a lot more time because I was doing my affirmations. I was listening to the program, going through other exercises, reading other books. I would spend 3-4 hours doing that. I don't necessarily have to do that anymore. So just trust your gut and don't give up. Look, the ideas that are in our subconscious mind, it's just a story that we're telling ourselves. It's a story we've told ourselves probably the majority of our life. We've been thinking and feeling in a specific cycle, and that becomes our reality. These affirmations, these ideas, these suggestions that we make are lines to a new story, and it stands to reason that if we are persistent at telling ourselves that new story, clearly we're going to become a different person. And when you become that different person and you show up into the same old reality, you're going to think, you're going to feel, and you're going to behave different. And when that happens, it's a whole new world that you're living in. I'm currently 45. I got into this when I was 37. It didn't take 8 years for me to change results. I had a dramatically different life a year from when I started. A short amount of time with intense effort at learning how to think a new way and learning how to feel a new way will create change relatively quickly. And let's be clear, you don't need to invent an entire new persona. You don't need to change 180 degrees from where you are right now. You might need a 5% shift in who you are, maybe a 2% shift. It doesn't take very much for you to have dramatically different results. And as you persist writing and speaking and listening to these affirmations, you always want to be reminded of the vision of your goal, those images and how it would feel to live that life. So you're repeating the right words for you specifically, and you're learning how to possess the right feeling and right emotion that's in alignment with your goal. And if you do that with enough persistence, you will find you won't have any problems with affirmations. And when the results actually finally show up, you'll really discover firsthand that truth that we become what we think about. Do this exercise today or this week. Make sure you get it done. Find the right words, find the right feeling, and begin firing your mind with that. Again, we become what we think about all day long. So think about your goal and your new affirmations all day long. And be sure to tune in next week for another episode of the Reprogram Your Mind podcast. If this episode has helped you in some way, please don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another episode. Feel free to share it with someone that really needs to hear this message so you can help spread good out in the world. And if you can leave a review on whatever platform you're listening to, rate the podcast, leave a review. That'll help this message get out to those people that need to hear it most. And remember, we become what we think about, and so do you.